Hey guys, welcome back. So today I want to talk to you about the recently released to the U.S. public M17 handguns that were actually issued to U.S. Army troops. These were handguns that were some of the first delivered to the United States Army after they adopted the M17 that the Army has now given back to Sig to take in newly produced handguns, and Sig is selling them to the U.S. public as decommissioned handguns. Now, some of you may have a problem with the term decommissioned. In the collector's world, we'll call guns that were in military service that were released to the public legally, not stolen by troops, then taken home after the war, like in World War I and World War II, where you'll see U.S. property marked 1911s. Those weren't purposely released to the public, but this M17 handgun was. Now, over here I have handguns that are U.S. military service handguns, recent handguns that were purposely built and sold to the U.S. public, and these were never used by the U.S. military. This handgun has been. So we'll talk about the M17, its recent decommissioning and why it was decommissioned and how it wound up being sold to the U.S. public and why you might want to pick one up. And then we'll talk briefly about these handguns, which are actual U.S. military service weapons that were never actually used by the U.S. military. So let's get into the video, guys. This M9 pistol was released by Beretta many years ago as a commemorative pistol. This handgun is unique because it has all the U.S. military proof marks on it, assembly numbers and things like that. On the hammer, you're going to find stampings that you would not normally see on a standard M9 Beretta that's sold to the civilian public. It's going to have PM on the slide right here by my index finger. The only thing that would keep this from being an actual service handgun is the fact that it was never purchased by the U.S. Army. These were made to be sold to the U.S. public, and they have all the original military markings on them that the early M9s had. And so these were really cool, and these came in a collector set that had a belt, a holster, and authenticity letter and things like that. And these were really, really cool collectible handguns, but these are not actual military service handguns that were used. Another handgun that came out, both this, and we recently did another video recently on the smaller version of this, the M18, but this is the M17 service pistol. This one in my hands was never used by the U.S. Army. And you'll notice one of the things that it has is black controls versus flat dark earth controls. Now, Sig sold a commemorative version of this in the very beginning that had the flat dark earth controls because that's what the Army had originally adopted, and then they went to the black controls for cost reasons or for ease of manufacturing. We don't know which reason was the driving force behind going to the black controls. They just did. And this handgun is something that me, a military collector, would like to have in my collection because it's a very good replica of the actual military service weapon, just like the M9 I showed you a second ago. Now, this one's very near and dear to me. This one is an M45A1, and this one has all the original markings on it that the original Marine Corps pistol had, right down to the USMC stamped on the slide. Colt released these to the public, and rumor has it they were military overrun guns, which is why they had USMC on them. But the minute I saw this handgun hanging on the wall at my local gun store and I saw the USMC on the side, I know that the Marine Corps doesn't allow you to sell things using their brand name. They'll sue you to make you stop. And it's one reason why you can't buy real Marpat camouflage. The actual military issued Marpat has little EGAs in it that will tell you that it's actual military service camouflage. If you copy the Marine Corps' trademarked or patented camo pattern too closely, they'll sue you, and that's another thing that they did with this handgun. They told Colt, stop it. So Colt did stop it, and this went from being the $1,900 handgun to being a $6,000 handgun on places like Gunbroker. Now, that was a couple years ago. I have no idea what they're worth now, but I have one. Travis Haley fired a few magazines out of it at one of his classes, and I fired a few rounds and then put it in its box. Not long after that, it became very collectible, and I haven't shot it since because the price had just skyrocketed. Now, this is another example of a handgun that the Marine Corps decommissioned, but it had the USMC on the slide, just like the gun I have here in my hands. They struck through the USMC, and then they released them to the public. But when they did it, many of the guns I've seen have like paperwork saying what unit the gun was actually issued to, so you know the actual pedigree of the handgun, which is super, super cool. And so those handguns sold for reasonable prices when they first were released to the public. But the last time I checked for an original strike-through USMC M45A1 pistol, they were as high as $16,000. So that's why it's so unique that you get your hands on an actual decommissioned handgun, that the serial number traces back to an actual military purchase, because that drives the value up to collectors over time. I don't know what this one's worth. It was never issued again, but you know, it's just skyrocketed in value because it's marked exactly like the original Marine Corps M45A1s. So that leaves us with the M17 Decommissioned Pistol that's just now coming onto the US market. They're going to be in various degrees of use in terms of like holster wear that you'll see on the slide there. Some wear here on the top cover for the rear sight. You'll have some that look almost brand new, and you'll have others that have, you know, marks and wear all over them. And that's just going to give them character, in my opinion. But they were actually issued. This one clearly was carried and used because it has holster wear, and it has a rack number back here. Jason says it looks like a 7. To me, it looks like a 7 or perhaps a 3, but it's in white lettering. Now, I also got an email from a Facebook group manager that is tracking these M17 released pistols, trying to figure out possibly what units they were with and things like that, because Sig isn't telling you. They're just shipping the guns in this vanilla cardboard box with the M17 owner's manual for the commercial version, and the gun along with its 2 20-round magazines, or 21-round magazines, an extra spring and guide rod, and then the pistol with its flush-mounted magazine, 17-round magazine. So that's how this handgun was shipped. And this one I paid just south of $700 for it, so it's about the same price as a new handgun like this without the actual military pedigree. Now, why did the U.S. Army get rid of them? Well, there's a lot of speculation. I don't think SIG's made any official statements. The U.S. Army certainly hasn't made any official statements. But I've heard from 2 U.S. Army armorers who have contacted me through social media saying that the guns were decommissioned because one guy said because the controls are flat dark earth and they went to black controls like you see on this handgun. Therefore, instead of just swapping the parts out, they traded them back to SIG to get the black controls. Another email I got from a different Army armorer said that there were not only color changes to the actual controls of the handgun, but there were some other internal changes that took place because they had found some problems with the guns in the field, which isn't uncommon. They'd found some problems with the guns in the field, and they were making changes to the handgun. In the very early release handguns like this, it just made more sense for the Army to trade them in and get the most current production versus updating the handgun, and that's how this wound up on the US market. All speculation. I don't know the actual truth. Maybe we'll get somebody in a position of authority to eventually tell us why these handguns were traded back to SIG and SIG released them to the US public. It's just cool that it's out there and that you can pick it up, because it's extremely rare that the US military will take actual service weapons and release them for sale to the general public. How much value will you see this, or how high will you see the value of this pistol go? Will it go as high as the $16,000 I saw on the M45A1s that were decommissioned? I don't know. That depends on how many of these SIG got back from the US Army. If it was 2,000 pistols, then yeah, these things will skyrocket in value. If it was 20,000 pistols, then it's going to have less value to collectors. There's just too many of them. We don't know the numbers yet, at least I don't. So all I'm saying is if you can get your hands on one of these, you might want to do it for investment purposes. If you're a military collector like I am, you're certainly going to want one because it's so rare that you can actually get a decommissioned weapon like this. The Marine Corps released the Barretts way back in the day, and I saw those things selling for as little as $6,500, and now those things are just, man, you could buy a brand new Corvette for what those things are worth now. So it's really cool to get your hands on an actual military service handgun like this. So if you see them out there, go ahead and pick one up. I think it's a solid investment. I wouldn't pay much more than $700 for it, at least right now, because they're rolling out right now from SIG. I've heard there's different tier levels that they're releasing them in at price points based upon the condition of the gun. I don't know if that's true or not. The dealer that got this in only had one type, and they were all priced the same. So I would only imagine these will start showing up on GunBroker for ridiculously high prices. I would first go to your Sig dealer and see if you can get on the back order list, because Sig is still currently releasing them, and you might have an opportunity to pick up one of these pieces of history. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video talking about the new M17 released decommissioned handgun. And if you would like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, a great way to do that. If you're watching us on desktop or a laptop right now in a proper web browser, you're going to see just underneath the video player the join button. And you can join our membership program here on YouTube, which helps monetize the channel because the ad revenue has been taken away from us for the most part. So consider clicking that button, checking out some of the perks, and joining our family here on YouTube. Another great way to support us is to go over to our Patreon page. There's the link in the video description down below, and follow that link and check out some of the perks, and consider joining our family there as well, and supporting us in our effort to bring you this type of video, and also our political activism, supporting us in that. Last but not least, swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Guys, thanks for 12 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.